In this episode of Paving the Funnel, we talk to Eva Thouvenot about tactics that eComm brands can use to unlock growth. Eva's the CEO of Rise, an e-commerce accelerator that transforms better life brands into thriving online businesses.
All right. Thanks, Eva, so much for being here. Really appreciate you joining us on Paving the Funnel.
My pleasure.
Yes, I love it. Can you please outline for me the framework of growth that you use at Rise?
Yes, for sure. It's pretty simple. It starts always with research and discovery, and then analytics, conversion rate audit, and then technical SEO audit, and then ultimately growth strategy and growth planning. Those being kind of the big buckets of our growth framework. If we wanted to dive deeper into it, in the research and discovery phase, we look into competitors, kind of customers avatar, customers information, as well as unique value proposition and just benefit of the products or the service.
Question I have is, when you get to that stage after doing the research and kind of the analytics piece, and you start thinking about mapping your growth tactics to the information that you just uncovered, where do you start? How do you know how to prioritize the various tactics that you could be employing with any particular customer?
Yeah, so when we look at prioritizing our growth initiatives, we use the ICE decision framework, which is well known out there, but we try to use it in a simplified way that's impactful and quick, just again as a tool for better decision making. So as you can see in the 2x2, it's always about impact in relation to your resources or the ease of implementation. And there's the low-hanging fruit, which is ideally having a high impact and use low resources or easy to implement. And that's kind of the quick win bucket. And I do want to have a caveat there that I call it the quickish wins, because I do not believe in any quick wins, because if there were so many quick wins, everybody would be running very successful e-commerce brands. But yeah, there are areas and tactics of growth that are easier to implement than others, and that can yield a bigger impact.
Can you share some examples of this framework in action with actual customers for us?
And the example that I'm going to highlight here is just like a grooming and healing typical direct-to-consumer brands. So a customer that we have in our client portfolio. And then what's important to know about them is that they have a low AOV, but they have a high repeat purchase rate. They're pretty cool brands, so that means we have a lot of flexibility from an ads perspective to be creative and fun and engaging. They have a low traffic because they haven't run a lot of ads before, and then they're in a very competitive industry. So those are kind of the insights that we would get through our framework and analysis, and then that tells us, okay, well, what should we focus on? And ultimately, we need to keep kind of a low customer cost per acquisition, because we don't have a lot of margins and room to play with. We need to ideally have an impact on that average order value or lifetime value, so we can have more room at the acquisition level. Obviously, need to drive traffic, otherwise everything else doesn't really make sense. And then ideally, we keep that high repeat purchase rate, because then that will help us in again having more money spent in the acquisition. So that being said, looking at this through this angle and having those insights in mind, I'll give you a few examples of tactics that we've used at the acquisition level on Facebook ads, for example, because we still think it's one of the best channel, especially early doors to test your acquisition funnels. So the first one that I'm not going to go too in detail here, but I always like to highlight, is that it's really important to have interest-based audiences, because this is really top of the funnel perspective, hitting new markets. And if you don't have a lot of traffic to your site, this is going to be one of the best way to scale that. So I would say research intensively what interest could your audience have, and there's nothing too crazy for that stage. So I like to give that to a person that really likes to go wild and crazy on the web and researching everything that they can possibly think of that could relate to that product or that brand. And then specifically in terms of tactics, one area we find works really well when you have a low average order value, or again, like a tight financial metric, is to run the ads for engagement before you turn them into a conversion. So you have multiple goals on Facebook ads. You know, you can take a conversion goals, or you can have landing page view goals, or there's different ways you can ask Facebook to optimize your ad. And when you don't have a lot of either budget or it's hard to convert your audience, it's always good to run your ad for engagement. So basically you're telling Facebook, make sure you find the people that are most likely to engage with this post or this piece of content. And then that means that Facebook is not looking at, your website or the product and so on. He's really looking to optimize people within the platform to engage with the post. And then what that makes is if you can have a low cost per result, so a low cost per engagement, then you can use retargeting afterwards to convert those people, and hopefully at a lower cost, because they already kind of are warm to your brand and your messaging. And I find that like this 2-step works really well, as opposed to have a typical top of the funnel for conversion and then a retargeting for conversion, which again, for some brands can be expensive and hard to monetize if you have a low average order value. And you can see here just some examples. This is a recent example for that grooming brand where they're running constant giveaways on their social organic feed. So this would be an Instagram giveaway, which again, who doesn't like a good old giveaway? But the difference here is that we're not trying to capture leads that might be low quality, or we're not trying to bring that traffic to the site. We're just asking them to engage with the giveaway, which is a very easy ask. And that, for example, cost us 9 cents per link click. So in this case, kind of 9 cents per engagement, which is really cheap. But then afterwards, we retarget them with like a page engager. So whoever engaged with the page or the social account, and you can see that the return on ad spend on that campaign was like 4.9, which for that account is really well, because they usually hover more around like the 2 to 3. So, and it's mainly because they engaged with it. It was really easy and organic. And then after that, they see a product, or, even a softer ask, but it makes them it's a lot better transition. That's a lot more affordable. Again, if you're tight on average order value. The last tactic that I can share, and that's not necessarily applicable to every businesses, but if you can offer a sample, that always worked really well. But again, it's just that good balance between trying to offer a sample to everybody and anybody. That's, everybody likes sample. But try to kind of make sure that the equation overall makes sense. So how much does it cost you to offer the sample and to get somebody to buy the sample, all the way to how many people that convert off the sample into, full-time customers. But it can be a really effective and cheaper way to drive traffic at the top of the funnel. So again, trying to reduce the cost per acquisition, that's a tactic that can work really well there. And you can see here some of example around a free sample campaign we've run, but the cost per result was about $7, which is way below their average cost per acquisition. In their case, it's usually around $25 to $30. So like a quarter of the price. And the cost per click super cheap at like 50 cents, and the click-through, unique click-through pretty good at 2.73%. So all the metrics are really great for like a top of the funnel engagement campaign. For them, it was a 16% return rate, which means that this campaign was overall really profitable. And if you own the business, or if you work for somebody that owns a business, trying to not look at the return on ad spend too much on those kind of campaigns, because they really don't mean much individually. It's as part of that overall acquisition funnel you're building that they make a lot of sense, because it's a free sample. So you're really not going to make a lot of money out of that campaign specifically. So another tactic around this time conversion and lead generation would be to use a combination of a messenger campaign with some kind of a lead capture initiatives on your site. So again, you drive all that traffic to your site, and most of them won't convert on the first session. So as you probably know already, you need to try to speak to them more than once and through multiple channels to push them into becoming a customer. So a tactic is to use Messenger instead of email. And again, I'm not saying email completely off the table here, but it's good to test those two channels, again, depending of the verticals you're in or the customer type that you have. But in this example, going back to the grooming brands, those are like different pop-ups that we had on site, and we tested to see which offer would resonate more with the potential customers. And again, the free trial, free sample just seems to be the winner for them, with like an engagement rate of 15%. It's really high for a lead capture on site. So we figured this was the winner. And then what we've done is we've linked this to a messenger bot as opposed to an automated email series. And the advantage of doing that is the open rate and click-through rate are just absolutely insane. So you can see here open rate of 99% and then click-through rate of like 70% or 83% with high conversion dollar value as well. It's just the nature of Messenger. You know, it's so quick and tangible. It's a lot faster to answer and engage with that than email. That being said, I always recommend to do both, but it's something that seems daunting again to try a messenger campaign, but there are apps out there that are really easy to use that come with like pre-built campaigns, and you just really have to tweak a few words here and there to make it really successful. So I'd say use a multi-channel approach. Start with one and build on it, but trying a messenger campaign for a free discount with purchase or free shipping or free trial can be really effective for converting your customers.
Thanks so much for giving us an example to really kind of paint the picture there. Could you give us some other examples of tactics that you employ often or see high success with?
Yeah, there's tactics around, again, if we're using the same clients that we were talking about earlier, big pain point for them is their average order value. So tactics that we love to increase average order value are introducing high value offers. So again, I love the idea of the power law, which just means that there will be a buyer for any price point. You might only have one, but there will be somebody buying it. So if you have the ability to repackage some of your products, and it doesn't have to be fancy or crazy or super creative, but it's just about having a possibility or an item that is worth a lot more than just your average order value will make a difference, especially as people start to be more aware of it. So just very simply introducing a high value offer. And then another common one is bundling. But again, I feel it's every client we work with, when we talk bundle, it seems very complicated, but it doesn't have to be very complicated. It's just about taking a picture of 3 of your best sellers together, and you don't even have to show the packaging. It's like, we're going to bundle these 3 and you're going to save 25% off, and then so be it. Don't even have to use fancy application or anything. It's just about, again, trying to get people to buy more than one product at the same time. And then another tactic that is also super easy to implement is just a free shipping threshold. So if you have an average order value that is around $20 or $30, you can have a free shipping threshold that's around $40. So $40 plus, you know, you'll ship for free. That is like close enough to your average order value that people might just add one more item. It's not like so far off, but it will make a difference down the line, because you're going to have people that just love free shipping. And I encourage you to test that as well. You can do a month at $40, you can do a month at $50, and really see if there's a big change in behavior. And it's so easy to change for most of you know, online e-commerce stores that I'd say that's a pretty quick one to try and test.
I know, like, I can countless times where I'm like, oh, I'm $5 away from the free shipping. I'm just going to spend $25 more right now.
Exactly.
It's worth it. Like, why pay for something like shipping when I could get something?
Yeah, it's very. This is a quick win. It's the only one almost that I would categorize as like literally create a new shipping fee. Go.
I'm curious if there are specific tactics that you recommend specifically for certain verticals or stages of growth? Like, do they break down cleanly by those kinds of factors?
And that's one common mistake I see across the brands we work with, is that they spend a lot of time on lead capture traffic and email marketing tactics and so on, but they have 500 visitor a month. So it's a lot of time spent on optimizing something that really doesn't have statistical minimums to make it very, very relevant. So I'd always recommend early stage business to really focus all hands on deck on trying to drive traffic. And again, if you have budget, then paid through Facebook and Instagram is usually where I recommend to start, just because they are the best advertising platforms out there right now. And you can really be granular into your audience selections and your criteria. So they give you the best chance of spending your dollar in the best possible way. As you move more into a bit more of a mature business, then I think a lot of it will have to do with on-site conversion optimization and lead capture and creating a really good user experience for your customers, so you can capture them as a lead but also convert them as a customer. And then again, moving one step further, when you really want to scale your efforts, then I want to say it's again about making that customer an advocate. So referral programs, loyalty programs, advocacy, and trying to really build a community around your brand. And that will kind of loop back into acquisition again. How do you tap into new acquisition channels that you haven't tested before? And then how do you leverage the current community that you have to kind of amplify your brand? So when you're thinking of growth and growth stages, there's really only 3 big metrics to look at when you're trying to grow your stores, and it's traffic, average order value, so how much money people are spending on your store, and then frequency, so how many times do people buy from you. And it's good to remind yourself that really those are the 3 areas of impact, and everything else that you're going to do is somehow going to feed into that. So depending of where you're at in your growth phases, you will pull on one or the other more. And then you will have tactics that are influencing traffic or average order value or frequency. Again, and you'll put more efforts into one or the other, depending if you're at an early stage or later, more mature business. So traffic would be the focus area if you're just starting out, obviously, because nobody's gonna buy more of what you have if they haven't bought anything yet.
Wow, this has been very tactical. I love all the examples you came with. This is really useful information. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us. This was awesome.
Great. I'm glad that it was useful. I always feel like, as an entrepreneur myself, I listen to a lot of webinar, and I'm always often coming out of them with like a bit of a, oh yeah, that was great, but super generic. So I like it when I can like go out and actually try to implement it. So hopefully there's one thing in this conversation that people can try outside of this conversation.